Hello. City Club members, friends, and community members, welcome. My name is Erica McAlpin, and I am your City Club of Central Oregon Board President. As many of you know, February is Black History Month, and I'd like to share 5 quick facts about Black History Month that you may or may not know. It started as a week in 1915 and was established by an organization led by Carter G. Woodson. February was chosen for a reason, and not because it's the shortest month of the year. It is to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. The week became a month in 1976 when President Gerald Ford proclaimed February to be Black History Month. I encourage you to learn little-known Black history facts. There's so much more that Black Americans have offered and are offering to this country other than the sacrifices made during slavery. So before we get started today, I would like to thank our community, platinum, and gold sponsors and our partners, ASI Wealth Management, the City of Bend, COCC, OSU Cascades, St. Charles, Pacific Source, Central Oregon Association of Realtors, and Brooks Resources. I would also like to thank today's supporters, Deschutes County, Central Oregon Community College, and Workability. Today it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Heather Ficht, who is moderating today's discussion. Heather is the Executive Director of East Cascade Works, and Heather has over 25 years of experience in workforce development in Oregon. She has a BA in sociology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and her master's in social work from Portland State University. Heather is a member of the state's Workforce and Talent Development Board and the past chair of Oregon Workforce Partnership. Further, she serves on the state's oversight body for the public workforce system, along with state agency leaders called the Workforce System Executive Team, and as a member of the Oregon Governor's Workforce and Talent Development Board.
I just have to say how absolutely fun it is to be here in real life. Even though I don't have Zoom filters, I'm feeling pretty good about it. So thank you all for having me. I am, as Erica said, the Executive Director of East Cascade Works. East Cascade Works is a nonprofit organization designated by the governor to serve as the local workforce development board, serving the 10 counties east of the Cascades. So we're from the Columbia Gorge all the way down to Klamath and Lake counties. And shockingly, that is a much smaller region than it used to be. So our role really is oversight, investment, and support of the public workforce system in Oregon, which is branded as WorkSource. So in Bend, over by Lava Lanes and Pilot Butte, there's your WorkSource Center. We also scale solutions for industry to help them find talent. And so I'm just going to really quickly give you a little bit of landscape about where we are in the world of workforce today in Central Oregon. So Kim told me to give it 2 seconds, so I'm gonna, 1, 2. Woo, there we go. So we still have a tight labor market, but it is loosening. So if you see on this graph, April to June of 2022, we had less than a person per job opening. There was a half a person per job opening. And now we're moving closer to almost a person and a half per job opening. So that's a great movement, but it's still clearly tight. The other thing to note is that part of the reason for this is we keep adding jobs. We have a robust economy and we keep adding jobs. These are the numbers of jobs, year over year employment gains. So you can see Crook County, 230, Deschutes County, 1,950 jobs, and 100 in Jefferson County. Further, I'm going to share something that every single person in this room knows. Holy cats, are housing prices bananas or what? So we used to import a lot of talent. There's nowhere for people to live, and they certainly can't afford to live here. That's just an explanation about why we're where we are. There are opportunities that abound. And one of them is being more creative around untapped talent in our area. Okay. So I want to give you two examples. One is Bethlehem Inn. So we recognize that people have unique needs and challenges and challenging barriers when it comes to employment. The process our partners have developed respects and honors this understanding and offers concrete supported steps to move forward when ready. So we actually have our partners at COIC that deliver service under the WorkSource umbrella go to Bethlehem Inn and have a cohort of folks that they're working with that they are helping prepare for work. They have access to all of the scholarships, on-the-job training, and resources that we have to offer under WorkSource. Another example is just north of us, we have Deer Ridge Correctional Institution. And at Deer Ridge, we have cited the first WorkSource center inside the prison in the entire state. The challenge is most of the folks that are in custody when they release are released to the valley. So when we do a lot of work to really prepare people to go back to work, and they go back to work in the valley, it doesn't necessarily help us, right? So we are scaling this program statewide, along with our other local workforce board partners, the Oregon Employment Department and the Department of Corrections. And so far, it's been really promising. We actually have had job fairs inside the prison. No, I wouldn't say a job fair, interviews. And they've gotten job offers before they even release. Why do I care about this population? The number one factor that can really reduce recidivism is rapid attachment to meaningful employment. If you can't, it'll reduce housing crisis. If you can have income when you're released, you're going to be able to find housing and you're going to be able to have meaningful work. So I like to say that workforce development is a team sport, and I'd like to invite a couple of team members to come on up on stage. So no one of us, no one entity in this room or in this country will ever solve workforce development alone. We need to do it in concert and we need to do it together. And I see many of my colleagues here that actually do this work as well. But today, I have the honor of introducing Rebecca Berry, who joined St. Charles Health Systems as Vice President of Human Resources in 2014. Prior to joining St. Charles, Rebecca served in human resource leadership roles for over 9 years. She earned her executive master's degree in business administration from the University of Oregon. No shout outs for the University. Okay. And her bachelor's degree in business administration from Boise State University. Also no shout outs. Okay. In addition, she has several human resource certifications to include her Senior Professional in Human Resources certificate. Kip Morris is the apprenticeship program coordinator for Central Oregon Community College, and he has his master's degree in organizational learning and performance from Idaho State University. Idaho gets the shout out. Wisconsin didn't get the shout out. PSU didn't get, okay. I don't know what to do with you folks. A strong advocate for skilled trades education, his programs bridge the gap between post-secondary education and careers in the skilled trades. In addition, he serves as the program administrator for Oregon Carpenters Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, JATC for short, and is a member of Oregon Community College Apprenticeship Committee. So if you could join me in giving them a round of applause. All right, well, we've got some questions for y'all today. And so I think I'm going to lean to you first, Kip. What role does partnership play in the execution of your programming, development, and recruitment efforts?
Our partnership.
May I offer you a mic?
You may offer me a mic. So what was that one more time? What role does partnership?
What role does partnership play in your programming and recruitment?
For outreach and recruitment, our partnership begins with the organization and listening to what the needs are. Oh. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Our partnership begins with the organization and learning about their organizational needs for employability and for people to become employable with them. So based off of that, my students and participants in programs look vastly different. I have participants that come from organizations. I have participants that come from secondary level education, from youth groups, and then also from partnerships with WorkSource. So.
Hopefully that's not my phone ringing. So Rebecca, same question to you.
Okay, for us, partnerships is really key. And I'm going to give an example of when we started our journey in really finding that we had shortages. It was in 2019, and pre-pandemic, we had shortages at that time. And it was in the CNA group, which is our Certified Nurse Assistant program. And so what we found is we needed more CNAs, and COCC has been an incredible partner. They were producing CNAs, but not at the rate that we needed them, based on the growth of our communities, based on, as we see people go into the CNA role, go into nursing school and transitioning on, that we needed to have more CNAs. So we reached out to them and asked them to help us be a partner in producing and opportunities for more CNAs. And so that's what we did. We built a program and worked with COCC as a partner to produce more CNAs. And in that time, we had it ready to launch in March of 2020. I know, right? And we'd worked really hard on this, and many of the people are sitting here today, which I really owe it to the teams at St. Charles and COCC as they came together. And yes, the pandemic happened, but we didn't stop because we knew that that need wasn't going to go away. If anything, it would intensify. And so we started that CNA, and it was our very first cohort that we did in partnership. And at the same time, COCC is still doing their program. This enhances it. And what it's allowed us to do is to be able to carry on an additional 11 cohorts, and we've trained an additional 135 CNAs through our program at St. Charles in partnership with COCC. And we have 4 more cohorts that we're launching in 2023. So without that, I just sit here to ponder today and think about, if we wouldn't have had those 135, where would we have been? Because we're still extremely short today. So knowing that that work and that partnership occurred had really helped us through, which we didn't even know at that time was coming, the pandemic and the need in our workforce challenges. So for me, that was just an ideal partnership, and it's continued. And we have other programs, from an MA program, a medical assistant program that we're working in partnership with, and then we're exploring a pharmacy tech. So it's just a great example of when you recognize that you have a gap in your workforce, how can you put programs in place using your community partners to help fill those development programs to help fill your gaps.
And Rebecca, can you tell us where do you recruit the participants in all of those programs?
Oh, I'm looking at Jenna right here. So Jenna is our talent acquisition senior recruiter, and we recruit in our community and really going out to fill them. And when I fill the positions, I'm going to rewind back to our work in 2019. We really had to stop and think of what would be the barriers. What would keep people from participating in this program? And we talked to people, and what we learned is it's really hard for people to go to school and not have income coming in. It's really hard for people to go to school, not have income, and maybe not have benefits. And so those were barriers that we learned really quickly. So what we did is we found a way to, 1, pay them while they go to school, and 2, to make sure that they have the opportunity for benefits. And so we removed those barriers. And so that helps with the recruitment effort. Our marketing team, which many members of our marketing team are here too, they help us in advertising the community, and I'm hoping that each one of you in the room today will listen about we have this amazing program and share it. And so we really rely and recruit across all of our communities to fill the seats in this program. So Jenna and the team work really hard to get the message out. So please help us in sharing that message.
Thanks, Rebecca. So Kip, can you describe your apprenticeship program and how you deliver that?
Thank you. Great question. There's a lot of caveats to apprenticeship, and one of the things that we've been focusing very heavily on is pre-apprenticeship. So pre-apprenticeship is a tool that we use to overcome barriers to employability. It's a very short program. It's embedded within an associate's degree, and it's designed to help participants enter into their field of study as a career at an earlier stage, which then transitions into apprenticeship where they can continue in their field of study as they work in their career. So that's a very basic of what apprenticeship looks like. And then we also have some internship opportunities embedded within those degrees as well. One of the challenges that I saw working in the industry was we had a really difficult time bridging the gap to bring students into the workspace, especially when you talk about skilled trades. And so making sure that we have internship opportunities embedded in our fields of study help to facilitate that pathway where we can now use internship to feed our apprenticeship programs. So there's some of the... Yeah, so that's a great question. So internship is a tool that we use to help people gain employability. I consider internship more aligned with a recruitment tool where the student's front-loaded with skills. They then are presented with an opportunity to display those skills in an internship fashion, which is a very short time frame, all under the umbrella of a 4-credit course. And then if the opportunity is there, then that can transition a student to an employee. And that's really what we're talking about, is people transitioning from students to employees. With apprenticeship, we're able to do the same thing, but we're able to do that a lot earlier. So apprenticeship is designed that you can enter into your field of study as an entry-level employee, and then as you are moving up and progressing in your career, you're acquiring your education in line with that. And so there's the motto, earn while you learn, and that's one of the benefits to that. And so what we're seeing just in general is that our programs, we're having students that are exiting these programs earlier and becoming employed before they finish their degree of study. And so some of the things that we address with our program design help students to get hands-on skills as they need it, and then transition to various kinds of learning formats, including hybrid and remote. We also have a pre-apprenticeship hands-on program that allows us to bring hands-on instruction to pretty much anywhere you want to put it. So we partner with a lot of high schools and with organizations to deliver pre-apprenticeship as a cohort. The two biggest barriers to apprenticeship were finances and transportation, and so we've got wraparound services from a lot of our partners sitting in this room to help students be successful in these programs, and then also the resources that we need to actually deliver these programs on site where they're needed to overcome some of these barriers to participation.
So Rebecca, could you talk a little bit about some successes or big impacts that you've seen from the programming that you've put in place at St. Charles?
Yeah, going back, I was just thinking about over the 11 cohorts. We started off with our first one as 10. And we realized really quickly that wasn't going to be enough at the rate we needed people. So we worked with COCC and went from 10 to 20. And so we've been running 20 per cohort pretty consistently, and will continue to do so in 2020. But when you think about it, having 135 people that may not have had an opportunity to go through a program because they are being paid to go through the program, we also pay their tuition, we're paying, have the opportunity to have benefits, and then when they're done, they get a transition into a job. And so there's a pathway for them. And so for having that success, I feel, of having 135 people into a position that they may not have had an opportunity is great. And from a standpoint of when we deliver care, having 135 more people that we can put at the bedside to care for our community is what I'm going to say is a big success. And it hopefully provides that pathway that if they want to continue on into other parts of the education, whether it be into an RN program, they have that ability to continue their education, as we have a tuition reimbursement program that can help them on that learning journey. And so it's really being able to provide development, the opportunities to grow, but maybe the opportunity that people may not have had if we didn't have the program.
Absolutely. Thank you. And same question for you. So what are give us some successes or impacts that your programs had?
Successes and impacts. Big success. We partnered with High Desert ESD right at the beginning of summer and went through an educator externship, and that really helped open our eyes from COCC's perspective on the things that we need to do to bring our programs in alignment with the work that's currently being done in our community. So the program that we've articulated for credit and brought on site now already actually existed at a number of our secondary level institutions under High Desert ESD. We've also delivered this program at an organizational level with organizations such as Facebook or Fortis, delivering this on site. So by bringing this program into the folds of curricula for credit, it's allowed a conduit for those pathways to be established where now we can articulate our classes for dual credit for high school students. We can also run it as a cohort for non-traditional students that would like to get the training in a shorter period of time. So, did I catch all of that?
Great job. So, Rebecca, I'm going to turn back to you. What advice would you give to leadership in an organization or a business owner to implement the fast track training program like you've talked about today? Any advice you have?
Oh, that's a good question. It doesn't have to be perfect, try it, learn from it. And think about, for us, it was asking the questions, what would be the barriers? And it didn't take long to figure out what those would be. When I said pay, benefits, how do you give people that support? So in those areas, think about it as an investment. Don't think about it as a cost, because that investment has a return on investment. And it has also provided the learning for us to look forward in what else can we do. So last year we launched the medical assistant program, and I mentioned that we're also exploring the pharmacy tech program. So start with one, learn from it, and then see where you can expand. But having that knowledge of where your gaps are, looking ahead in that workforce development planning to say, where do I anticipate having gaps, and then starting to put a pathway in place to be able to bridge those gaps.
That's great. So Kip, for you, what advice might you give around a business or an organization that's interested in apprenticeship?
Great question. I would say get in touch with COCC, specifically me today. I would say to try to think out of the box. When you think about apprenticeship, you think about traditional skilled trades education. So I get a lot of carpentry, electrician, and so forth. I can give you an example of how apprenticeship would apply towards an HR department, right? So, and the Bureau of Labor and Industry is looking to apply the apprenticeship model to other careers that are outside of what we would call a typical skilled trade. So I would take a look at some of the employees that you might be hiring that are currently in our programs now and look to see, is this a program that we might be able to bring apprenticeship into it to support it so that we can help students that transition from student to employee, bringing them in earlier, also providing conduits for non-traditional students as well.
That's awesome. I have an example of a non-traditional apprenticeship that we're trying to build with COCC in their early learning educator program. So we are looking at, in partnership with our local CCR&R and the Early Learning Hub, COCC and East Cascade Works got a little bitty tiny baby grant to build a model to have someone who is pursuing their associate's degree as an early learning educator also potentially be getting their journey level apprenticeship, which will allow us to basically pay people instead of having them pay tuition to be in a practicum. They could be paid while they're on the job, and it would become their field placement. So before we go into audience questions, I'm going the wrong way. I want to just talk a little bit about resources. There we go. So I would encourage you to check out our website, ecworks.org, because we have several really helpful resources there. And I'd like Shannon McGivney in the audience. Could you just wave your hand? This extremely talented person has developed workforce resource guide that's available there. It will basically outline every resource that you can get either from EC Works or through our WorkSource system. Also, she's developed these incredible industry magazines that highlight some of the amazing work that KIPP and other partners are doing in construction and healthcare. In addition, there's currently an employee assistance training grant RFP open. So if you are a business owner or you are with an organization that needs some training funds, this is a matching grant. We encourage you to check it out. Although our funds come with 4,500 pages of regulations, we were able to make this a 2-page application, so be impressed. The other place I would direct you to is Future Ready Oregon. Future Ready Oregon is a suite of grants and different funding streams that came down the last legislative session. And right now, there's $80 million available that isn't being procured yet, but should be in the spring, for work-ready grants. So these are very specific to 3 different industries: manufacturing, tech, and healthcare. And it's really intended to serve certain priority populations. I have a personal goal of making sure that $8 million of that money comes over the mountains to our communities, because that's about 10%. So I would encourage all of you to check it out. If you have any questions, I sat on the I co-chaired the technical advisory board that informed how they're going to do this next round, and I'd be happy to talk with you. It's not about the money coming through our organization, it's about the money coming to our communities. So with that, I would love to pass it to audience Q&A.
So if you have questions, go ahead and come to the back of the room to this microphone, so hopefully we don't get too much feedback.
I was just curious, Kip, how many different apprenticeship programs are you guys running right now?
Thank you, great question. Right now, we're running one apprenticeship program. It's carpentry. We support a number of other apprenticeship programs and have relationships for other JATCs to utilize COCC resources to deliver their programs as well. And we are definitely looking to expand that.
Curious what your retention is like out of the placement programs that both of you are doing?
No, go ahead.
Right now, let's see, so the last cohort that we ran, out of 100% of students that were enrolled and placed in it, 100% of those students graduated and were placed into apprenticeships.
And for the MA program that we ran last year, we didn't have as high of retention in that one. But for the CNA one that we ran with about 135 people, roughly, if I ran my numbers right, it's about 70%.
Hi there, Laura Handy with Heart of Oregon Core. Thanks so much to City Club for hosting this conversation on this topic today. It's very important. And Kip, thanks. Kip just came from teaching some of our students, so thanks for being a magician and being in 2 places at once, Kip. My question is around really recognizing that youth participation in the labor force have been at stubborn historical lows for 15 to 20 years now, and the numbers are not getting better, they're getting worse. And by youth, that's 16 to 24, so don't just think of 14-year-olds, 16 to 24-year-olds. And my question is, we talk a lot about how we need to support young employees in what they need to learn and training. And I guess my question is, what about training for employers around the type of adapting cultures or inclusion practices so when young people join the workforce, they experience a workforce that is culturally accepting of how they see the world and who they are?
I think you just nailed it, Laura. That is absolutely what needs to happen. We have never before in history had 5 generations in the workforce. And the way that you supervise a millennial is very different than the way you coach and supervise someone who is in their late 50s. And I think that there isn't an easy answer to that, but I do believe that working toward inclusion and always asking the question, is this the rule because we've always done it this way, or is this the rule for a reason? And I think that can happen across many different areas. So thinking about even when you're hiring and you're posting a position, does it really require a bachelor's degree to do the job? That's called degree inflation if it doesn't. And that's just a shorthand for soft skills. So one of the things that we are working on at East Cascade Works this summer and hope to launch in the fall is just a video, just as a starting place that'll have resources with it, but a video that really supports hiring employers, or particularly organizations or businesses that hire interns. So young people, 16 to 24-year-olds, really. And how do you make it a welcoming environment, and how do you get the most out of that young person? And so that's not the answer. A video isn't the answer. It's not a one and done. But I think it's a starting place to start to build that muscle memory and look at the way that you do your practices in order to make a more inclusive workplace that includes all those generations. And I'd be interested too, Rebecca, if you have thoughts about that and how any efforts that St. Charles does to kind of retain younger talent and what that looks like.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that I'm going to say we don't have mastered yet. We're really working on it. To your point, 5 generations in the workforce. It takes us that moment to look back and say, why are we doing this? Does this still work? Is this still effective? Is this meeting the needs of our population? You know, and focusing on that sense of inclusion, but also belonging and connection. How do you bring people together? And, you know, we went through an area to where there was a lot of, you know, whether it be isolation or virtual now throughout the pandemic, and bringing people back, helping them build connections and getting tied into the work that they're doing, the teams that they're working on. And when you look at these programs, I was just sitting here reflecting. I know you asked the question about 16 to 24, but what we've also found with the CNA program is people coming back for a second career, wanting to do something different, and this is providing them the pathway to be able to do that. And so whether it be newly into, and they're just entering into the workforce, or they're coming back within a second career, or wanting to have a change within their career, it provides pathways. But being able to find, and I think some of the things that we're having intentional work around, and we actually created a new position, is really around getting belonging, that inclusion, and really looking at our benefits to say, as a whole, we call it our total rewards philosophy, and that includes not only how we pay people, but the benefits that we offer, the development that we offer, and then the culture. And those 4 quadrants coming together and looking at it from a holistic standpoint.
I would love to add to that. So some of the things that we're doing with the Create Inclusive programs is create inclusive classrooms. We are regulated through the Bureau of Labor and Industry for our outreach and recruitment efforts, and so that's reaching out to everybody. So our partnerships with groups like East Cascade Works and WorkSource help us to facilitate that. Traditionally, apprenticeship, when I grew up, was something that was looked down upon, and that was something that we used to stick kids in school that were your troublemakers. Well, thankfully, those troublemakers have carried apprenticeship forward to where it is now, and so we want to make apprenticeship inclusive for all the non-troublemakers to come and to join us and to see the value in what we're getting from apprenticeship. So thank you for asking that question.
Heather, can I add some possible responses to that? I promise Katie and Talina didn't plant me, but the Chamber is having a 2-part training to do just that, which is coming up, and Cyrus is somewhere around here, I don't know, but it's coming up and it's soon, and it's really about that kind of training. How do you create more inclusive workplaces? And it's a 2-part series, so please encourage the people who might want to be in there to go.
And then February 28th and March 1st at the Expo, and we are one of the sponsors, and I highly recommend it.
Look at that synergy. And then the other thing I would say is we're so lucky to live in this community where we have OSU's Innovation Lab and COCC's Center for Business, Industry, and Professional Development. And these organizations will create customized training based exactly on that need. So if you come to either organization and say, we really need to train that kind of multi-generational competency for our managers, we can build customized training at either institution, and that's why the Innovation Hub and that's why our Center for Business and Industry exists, is to meet those needs and create that training for you. So,
I just also wanted to throw out there, Young Professionals Network with the Ben Chamber is another opportunity. And I see Laura snapping, I like that. Very, very beatnik of you.
Is there any funding or program opportunities we should be paying attention to out of this current legislative session?
Whew, that's a great question. It is still being pared down. If there are any legislators in the room that want to take this instead of me, that'd be great, because there are like 5,000 literally bills right now. And as they apparently, I'm learning this stuff too, but as they're being discussed in committee, thousands of them will drop. So I don't have a list right now, but I do want to say that I am supporting the Higher Education Coordinating Commission's Office of Workforce Investment budget, because we're in that, as are the community colleges and OSU Cascades. And also, the Department of Corrections has a budget line item in it that is going to pay for all the technology to get the WorkSource centers embedded in all the prisons in the state. And that is just so important, and I can't understate how it took us 5 years to get a WorkSource center in a prison here, because the bureaucracy is like, whoa, big. And it is for a reason, right? It's public safety. But to get someone who hasn't used a computer ever to be able to access a computer before they're released is really, really important. Could you imagine you've never even seen a smartphone and you get released from prison, and now guess you go apply for a job, Rebecca, on this smartphone. Good luck, you know? So.
It's an excellent segue to my question, but first I just wanted to share, my name's Jamie. I run a communications agency called MixD Communications. We work on social justice issues. My industry is 87% white on average in the US. We were lucky enough, maybe crazy enough, to do an apprenticeship program in partnership with the Housing Commission and an educational institution, specifically to provide paid job training, support, and curriculum to help folks get into digital marketing. So if there are other small businesses here that have not yet tried something like this, it's really exciting, it's fun, it's just a really cool way to think about work and supporting the community, and I've learned a lot, and some really amazing changes can come out of creating partnerships like that. But my question for you is, during the pandemic, our company went virtual, so we went from having a place where folks could come in and we could see them sitting in the chair in front of a computer, and across the board, from young folks to older folks, let alone the new folks that we're trying to welcome into our industry, we're struggling with Slack and Asana and Google and videos, and I know a lot of people here are. So my question is, what advice do you have, or what are you all thinking about to prepare not only the workforce for careers, but specifically in a modern workplace that is a lot of digital technology?
Thank you for that question. That is about 20% of my job right now, is bringing apprenticeship into a digital world. There's a lot of analog systems that we deal with historically with apprenticeship. One of the changes that we've made to our curriculum design is having hybrid programs that allow us to transition from hands-on delivery of education to remote. So that's one of the benefits. Getting people to use the technology is always fun, but to be honest with you, a lot of our younger apprentices, it is expected. The apprentices who might be a little bit older, they are using a lot more technology in the workforce right now. Obviously, everybody has smartphones. A lot of the systems that we use accommodate that technology, so it's not really that big of a learning curve to fold that in. One of the things that I look forward to from a teaching methodology or an andragogy perspective is how can we use virtual technology to capture the procedures of what we're trying to do in real life and then bring those systems to people so that they can become familiar with it. There's a ton of value in that. And so an example I'll give you is welding. You can virtually learn how to weld where you put a hood on, you can virtually weld, but you don't actually have the fire in your house. But if you're claustrophobic and you didn't know that and you put a welding hood on virtually, you would absolutely know that you did not want to take a welding program. And there's a ton of value in that. And so I look at ways, how can we provide pools of water, if you will, for people to dip their toes in, to learn about themselves, to learn about what the education looks like, in addition to how does this look for organizations? How can we capitalize on different curriculum deliveries and technologies to bring that education closer to where the students are at?
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
This is a bit off topic, but of all the things that have come up, it sort of hits on something that I feel is missing from the conversation and probably would be a whole nother 2 city club meetings. But to me, the elephant in the room in connecting employers and employees is the fact that we don't have a public health care system. And so when Rebecca talked about benefits, when an employee is having to base a job decision around whether or not I have health care, that is really a disadvantage to both the employee and the employer. And I would just love to hear your guys' thoughts about how, I mean, it's a big topic, so I don't know how you could even address it, but what your thoughts are on that, disconnecting the employer from having to provide health benefits and actually having a public health option. Thank you.
I support it. I do. When you think about how much it costs employers to pay for health insurance, and no offense to anybody, but then insurance companies get, their cut in there, and it's complicated. And I don't think that there's anything to do around a federal solution. So I don't know that there are local solutions for something that big and cross-cutting, but I'm going to lean on my healthcare expert over here and see if she has any other thoughts.
Boy, that's a big topic. Yeah, probably a whole nother discussion on that. But when you think about it, it is really important to have benefits. And even thinking about the hospital, as people are coming through as patients that don't have the benefits, we care for all. And so, as they come in or in, but to have that on the back of people's mind, it is on the back of their mind. And so, having that opportunity to have everyone have benefits sounds absolutely amazing. In the midst of time, since we don't have that, I'd really encourage employers to find ways like we did, is making sure that you take that barrier away and give them benefits while they're going through that education. Because we have a gap in that, and that's a known gap. And until we fix it, I think which is much greater than all of us in this room, thinking about what we can do with the ability to help people, knowing that that is a hurdle for them.
I agree. We specifically with apprenticeship, we help provide a lot of additional wraparound services. I think that benefits is one of those things that we should be talking about in the scope of what are we doing to help people become successful in the programs that they're engaged with. I can say that one of the benefits, I'm trying to think right now as you ask the question if I know one of my apprentices who does not have benefits. And the answer to that question is no.
Hi, Whitney Swander, here with the United Way of Central Oregon. I'm really excited about the pathways and innovations that you all are building in apprenticeship. A resource within the United Way network is a study called the ALICE Report, Asset Limited, Income Constrained but Employed. In our region, we're still using data from 2018, and imminently there will be new data that's available that pulls from the 2020 census. That data tells us that 38% of folks in our region, Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, are employed, but they don't earn a wage that allows them to survive here. And I think Heather queued us up with some of that data about housing, et cetera. When we look at that data disaggregated at just our rural communities, and when we look at communities of color, that becomes 42% for our rural communities. It becomes 58% of our communities of color that are working, they are employed, but unable to afford their daily life here in Central Oregon. So while I'm really excited, and I have been watching sort of on the sidelines, the CNA work and other apprenticeships that are coming on, childcare, et cetera, these continue to be low-wage jobs. And as we think, this new data is coming out, I think that we're going to see increases in the number of ALICE folks in our community, folks who are employed, many of you would think gainfully, right? But are unable to afford housing, food, transportation, healthcare, childcare, elder care, the basics to survive. So I'm curious, as system leaders, folks like Heather, innovators like Kip, and people who are in institutions like Rebecca, how are you thinking about pathways once people are in your door? Because I don't think entry-level jobs are our target, right? They are a step in. What are the commitments? What are the systems? And what would you like to say to your fellow employers here about how we build a workforce system that actually is a pathway to prosperity?
That is a great question. These are all really, really good questions, and thank you for bringing that up. That really drills on one of the benefits of the apprenticeship model. You have to understand that as an apprentice student starts, they are considered an entry-level employee. By the time they graduate their program, they are considered the top of their trade, in alignment with anybody else who's the top of their trade. So one of the differences between a traditional program of study and apprenticeship is, in a traditional program of study, you would go get your education and then you would step into the workforce, typically as an entry-level employee, and then spend quite a bit of time working your way up. Exactly. With that, as an apprentice, you actually, when you card out with your degree, you also card out with an industry credential. And at that point, you're considered a master in your craft and you are at a prevailing wage for your career.
One of the challenges with apprenticeship model is that the employer needs to pay the wages while the person is learning. And so I think that's why it's harder to implement that in other settings. Whitney, you brought up so many amazing points, and it's really challenging because our wages lag the wages in the Valley, despite the fact that the cost of living is as much, if not more, than it is in the Valley. I was a little surprised to see the average home price in Crook County was $406,000. That feels really unattainable on some levels, and I think, you can't afford Bend. Well, you live in a suburb, but holy cats, $406,000? So, and I don't have a quick or easy solution for that. I think the reason that our organization and our board of directors selected healthcare, tech, manufacturing, and construction as our priority sectors are because of the volume of career ladders and lattices. So you can move this way, you can move this way, you can move that way, you can move that way. And so there are entry-level opportunities. Healthcare, there are no, oh my gosh, that's probably the most careers that you can get in one industry. And so there are entry points, but to your point, you can't stop at the entry point. You need to have really clear pathways for what's next. And so what I love about what you're doing at St. Charles is they're even recruiting internally from you don't call it food service, but you call it something else.
Hospitality services.
Hospitality services. And to basically, and that's a step up. And then you could be a CNA, and then you get a step up to the MA. So we need more of that. We need to incentivize more of that as a state. And although I think apprenticeship is a key solution, we have to figure out the wage issue. Because, for example, with the Early Learning Educator program, those employers aren't going to be able to pay that wage to those apprentices. We need to fundraise. We need to develop for those wages. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, because it can't. There's no margins for it. So with that, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, there's a lot to that question. I'll start and take a couple different avenues from it. With the workforce challenges and the shortages across, we have had to be very aggressive with wages, and we have to be very competitive, not only, from a local market, but across the mountain. And you think about the I-5 corridor, because that's where, that's part of our recruitment field. So we have been looking at wages. We look at them really closely and make adjustments as needed. Sometimes we have a pretty regiment we look at our market in the fall and make increases and adjustments as needed. And then at the first quarter, we're also looking at making adjustments. And we just put in an adjustment to make sure that we could retain and recruit top talent. It's a really important thing to do. And it's a scary thing to do when you have financial challenges too. But when it comes down to it, without people, especially in healthcare, you can't take care of people. So we really look at it as an investment, and to make sure that those investment is there and that you have a competitive wage so you can focus on retention. And the market's been moving fast, so when you just think that you have a competitive wage, you probably don't, because it's out of date so quickly. So it's one that you have to really keep your eye on. Second thing that we've done is really tried to build pathways. And I'm thinking about the CNA program, and I go back to that one. When our very first cohort that we did, and we do this every time, we look internally. We wanted to provide that pathway for all of our folks working in our hospitality, food services, environmental services, whether we call them central processing. We have all these jobs across the organization. And we went out and we said, okay, where might they come from? And we really didn't know. So we went to our leaders and said, we're given a pathway here. We want us to be able to plan, but we want people to have the chance to do this program. So don't worry, we will find you another person to backfill, encourage them, let's promote it, and we'll have enough of a launch pad to get your backfill before they transition to the program. So you have to be thoughtful as you go and do the planning. It's not perfect every time, and we can attest to that, but start internally, give people the pathway. We developed, again, the CNA, we start with the trainee program, so they have a trainee wage, and then when they complete the training and they get their certificate, then they move into the position. And then we have the CNA 2, so if they go and they further their education, then there's further pay that goes along with that too. So when you can think about building pathways, or if it's not pathways within this certain specific field, what other pathways, right, they have interest, so you can help them reach their potential and their career desires. And that could be through sponsoring tuition reimbursement programs. We have one of those too. So they might start like on a CNA path and they say, I really like this. I want to maybe become an RN. And so they have the ability to apply for tuition reimbursement to help them on that journey. And that provides, obviously, different income. So those pathways to be able to continue to grow is important, and also keeping a close eye on your wages because the market's moving fast.
Can I add one thing to that? In apprenticeship, we are required to do an annual wage survey. And what that means is that any apprentice that steps in knows exactly where the top end of their career field is and where they are stepping into it at. If you give that scale a 0 to 10, with 0 being like the lowest entry point, most apprentices come in at like a step 4, not a step 0. Every 6 months that they're in the apprenticeship program is a guaranteed pay increase as they track their way up to a prevailing wage, and that's like regulated for us. So it makes it very clear for anybody that's looking at coming into apprenticeship of, what does the career path look like, what does the job look like, what does your pay increase look like. That is very standardized and regulated for us.
And just to kind of put a finer point on Rebecca's point about checking out the wages and making sure that you're keeping pace, the last year-over-year increase in cost of living, so not goods and services, but wages, actual wages paid in the U.S. went up 8%. And I don't know, any of you in HR probably know this, I've never seen it go up more than like 1.5% in a year. 8% nationally. That's bananas. That's big. I think we got another
Yes, thank you. My name is John Sulzer, and I'm older than dirt. So I can't relate with some of you younger people, but 60 years ago, I was a junior in college and looking for a summer job, and was hired as an intern. and the advantage of that was all of my cohorts were looking for jobs also. And they were very selective on who they picked. And so they picked 5 of us, and we worked for the summer, and we had various jobs. But the neat thing about it was I could see the culture after the end of the summer that I could maybe go work for, and they could check me out to see if I was worth hiring. They said, yeah, we want to hire you after you graduate. So I had that in my back pocket as I was interviewing other companies and so forth. So I ended up working for the company. When I retired, I would say half of the senior executives had come through the intern program. So my question to you is, why aren't you doing this? Because to me, it was a very cheap, for the company, it's a very cheap way of recruiting. You get work done, you get to check out the person, they get to check out you, and so you don't bring them in and then try to figure out how you're going to fire this person. You already know a little bit about them. So really, I'm just supporting what you're doing, and I'm surprised we have to do it, because I just think it's such a good program for both sides that we ought to be doing it. So.
Hear, hear. There's actually research by Andy Summerall that says young people who have an opportunity for an internship before they graduate high school have higher high school completion rates, they matriculate to post-secondary at higher rates, and they have higher lifelong earning. This is a really important opportunity for young people, and there's also a loyalty, both sides, right? So if someone gives you a chance, and I'm thinking about your employees, it'll be really interesting over time to look at the folks that you put through your programs and see how long you retain them. Because I would bet that it's a higher retention rate because of that loyalty. So Youth Career Connect, check it out.
Hi, Melissa Beinstalakia from Bend Pine Schools Board of Directors. And one of the goals that Bend Pine Schools has adopted in the last year is that every one of our students graduates with a passion, purpose, and plan for their future. And so I'd be interested from hearing from you, if we're looking at education as a K-16 trajectory, what are things that you see that are strong, that are happening in that K-16 space? And then what opportunities do you see in terms of collaboration with local districts?
I just want to throw one thing out there that's a pretty big deal. In this area, High Desert ESD was able to get the pre-apprenticeship program in construction approved through the Bureau of Labor and Industry. And I say that's a really big deal because now 18-year-olds, when they graduate from high school, from that program of study, and I think, correct me, Kip, it's Bend High, who else is doing it? Redmond and Crook County High School. And maybe Madras coming up. Come on, Jeffco. So what's a big deal about that is statewide, the average age of an apprentice in the building trades is 28. So to have 18-year-olds be competitive with 28-year-olds, that is unprecedented and very, very impressive. But did you want to add some more things?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember how to rephrase that statement. So
I'd say things you see that are strengths that you see in that space, and then opportunities locally.
Good. Thank you for refreshing my memory, because I was thinking that as you were asking the question. So one of the things that I've noticed is multi-generational support for apprenticeship. So as we've had previous generations that have been apprentices and worked in skilled trades, now their children, as they come up, understand the value of that. So they're looking at that as a first option and not really exploring additional options. The opportunity, I feel like, is to knock down some of the barriers that we've created historically over the last, my generation at least, where, it's a place that we house bad kids that aren't good at other classes, and showing them the value of what's actually out there. I had no idea until I got out of school, like what actually was available for skilled trades. And so we need to do a better job of providing spaces for students to engage and to see our programs, really leaning on interactive engagements with them so that they can feel what it's like to do what we're doing. I think that those are successful ways to bring students into programs, and then obviously making sure that we articulate our programs with what's being done existing. Not having it at COCC was a huge gap. It was really difficult for CTE instructors that I spoke with to say, hey, will you take this program? The students weren't able to see the benefit. They weren't able to see how it benefited them in a program of study or as a career. And so we're doing a lot of work to make sure that we're articulating non-credit certificates, so that way we can expedite training for students, also having for-credit training as well, so that we can serve the breadth of our students and our customers. So.
Yeah, I just maybe add and emphasize awareness. What opportunities exist in healthcare. If you think about it, often people think, well, there's nurses and doctors. Well, there's so many more jobs that are pertinent to really supporting healthcare. And so having people have awareness, the opportunities, where they can go, how to get there, and sometimes just seeing how do I get on the path? And then once I get on the path, once you can get them to our doors, then we can help them from there. But I think in just creating the awareness of what the possibilities are out there.
I think a challenge that we're all facing is that I've seen a new statistic that young people today will actually change careers, not jobs, careers 5 times in their work life. I don't know how you expect a 16 or 17-year-old to figure out what they're going to be when they grow up, when it could change 4 more times. So I think the best thing we can do is arm young people with problem-solving skills, seeking information skills, and kind of just those 21st century suit-up, show-up skills. Because the thing that isn't going to get automated and the things that aren't going to change are the things that make us uniquely human. Communication skills, being able to look someone in the eye, things like that. And I think the more we can get foundationally strong in that, a lot of times industry is willing to train on the specific jobs. It's the fit. It's, are you a hard worker? Can you solve a problem? Are you going to be like a deer in the headlights if something goes awry? So I think also just focusing on those foundational skills is key. How are we doing on time? Do we have time for another?
We are done.
We are done. I'd like to introduce Kim Gammond.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you to Heather, Kip, and Rebecca for joining us today, and thank you to our program planning committee, Cathay Sabatier, Daisy Lehman, Christine Coffin, and especially Angela Saracino for planning today's forum. Thank you to our elected and appointed leaders for joining us today, including Patty Adair, Phil Chang, Melissa Barnes-Ducala, Tony DeBone, Bill Kuhn, Megan Norris, and Kat Zwicker. And coming up next, on March 16th, here at the River House, please join us for our next forum. We need to talk about gun safety. The information about that forum will be going out next week, so members will get the first invite for that, and then and if you've been here today, you're on our mail list, so you'll get that invite in a week or so. Finally, if you're not a member, please consider joining today. Today is our last day before our membership rate increase, and there is information on your tables as well as out front. Thank you for being here today and your willingness to discuss topics that are important to our community.